Welcome to the Goalist. I'm the host, Alicia. Today we are talking about learning a new language, and I am here with my friend Micol, who is also a language teacher. How many languages? What languages do you know?
This is a question that a lot of people ask me here in the United States, and I'm saying many, but all of them know well. I'm Italian, so I speak
Mhm.
Italian. I've been living in Spain, so I speak Spanish and Catalan a little bit because I was in Barcelona, French, and I'm trying to learn Portuguese and
Okay,
English.
okay. But you teach Italian, right?
Exactly. I used to teach Spanish as well. I was doing like two languages, but now I'm just focusing on one.
Got it.
Yeah. When I was in Spain, I also went to Spain without knowing Spanish. And so I was there,
Okay.
and everybody says that Italians have an easy life in Spain because you use Italian, you put an S at the end, and it's Spanish, right? Like in Italian, friend is amico. Everybody says if you say amigos, people will understand you. It's not like that. And there's a
Mhm.
specific word that in Italian means one thing, and in Spanish means another one. I wanted to say to a friend that I was embarrassed by something I did. And of course, in Italian, embarrassed is imbarazzata, but in Spanish, embarazada means pregnant.
And
And
I knew where you were going with that. I was like, wait.
yeah. And so this friend of mine was like, Nick, you're winning. I got you pregnant. And I was like, no. And it was so awkward. Um, and I do remember those at the beginning when I was living in Spain and I was trying to speak. I was in this group conversation with a couple of friends and I couldn't express any thought in a constructive way. And I felt so stupid. So now it's something that I always tell my students. It's normal at the beginning. You're going to feel this way. It's going to go away. You're going to enrich your vocabulary.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
not the first time I heard that because it can feel like being a toddler at first, like not being able to express yourself.
absolutely.
So we're talking about learning languages. They say a lot about the neurons, and it's so much easier in the brain. Like it's so much easier for a baby to grow up learning more languages. Did you know multiple languages when you were really young, or how did you learn them over time?
I had the privilege of studying English since I was like 6 years old. My mom and my dad put me in this like small group of friends with a mother tongue teacher, and she was coming to our house every week. And we were doing like a super funny things, right? Like theater or like treasure hunt, all in English. She was speaking to us all in English. And that's how I learned. Being European, of course, makes it easier to study like languages that come from Latin. So of course, when I started going to middle school, I started learning French. And it was kind of easy because it's the same root. Words have always the same meaning. You know that the grammar also is similar. That's how I picked a second language when I was like 11 or 12. And then I learned Spanish when I was already an adult, like when I was 24 and I moved to another country. I think learning English since a young age really helped me master English the way that I do today. I feel that Italian people in general, there are a lot of Italians with a very good English level, but also we're not famous to have a nice English at school.
For me, so my goal is to learn a language. That language is probably going to be Spanish because I have learned quite a bit of it. I want to become fluent in another language. That's the goal. And so I did a few years in high school, studied abroad in Spain, knew people who spoke Spanish. That was helpful. I've lost a lot of that. And now I use Duolingo every day.
Mhm.
What would you add to that to make it easier to really get to the point from elementary, where you're just learning a lot of basic words, to becoming fluent?
This is a great question. I'm a fan of Duolingo, but not too much.
Mhm.
I always encourage my students, for instance, with Italian, but also Spanish, to really pick a show that it's easy, not, with dialects or like with very good pronunciation. I always say, watch Love is Blind in every language you want to learn. I did it for Portuguese. Sure, there's one in Italian, there's one in Spanish. The content is very easy. They're talking about down to earth things and they're talking to the speed of a normal conversation. That's what you want to be exposed to, right? Because I feel that people are really can master reading, can master writing, But then when it comes to listening and speaking, that's the weakest part.
Yeah.
So exposing yourself to that could be like a good starting point for any language.
Okay, I love that too because when you say watch a TV show, I'm like, okay, what? I don't know what TV show would have like heavy accents or like which one to choose. But Love Is Blind, that's a good one because they are talking about basic getting to know you type of questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Exactly. They're like, what do you look in a man? Right? Or like,
Mhm.
how is your family? What are your values? Like very easy
Yeah.
things.
What is a challenge you had to overcome in learning languages?
I mean, learning Portuguese has been really challenging for the pronunciation. And now I understand why, for maybe Americans, it's very hard to learn Italian or it's very hard to learn Spanish because there are sounds that your tongue is not exposed to, right? Portuguese is the same for me. I really need to think through. And I would say Spanish is also not being very, very easy at a proficiency level when you want to scale up a little bit.
So different languages have their own difficulty levels, especially if you're not used to them. What do you think makes a language click for someone learning it? Like when that moment of, okay, I finally got it.
When you drink and you're a bit tipsy and then you have your stream of thoughts that comes out and you're
Mhm.
not really thinking twice about what you're gonna say. I think that's one like this language click, meaning that you're not doing the word by word translation, but you're kind of going with the flow and saying something. I do recall a moment in which Spanish was that for me, that I didn't have to, when you go to a shop and in your brain, you're like, okay, that's what I have to ask to the shop assistant, right? And you're
Mm,
phrasing, but when you go and you go with the flow, and maybe you even make mistakes, but you're fluent, you kind of like just say it and people reply. That is a great click. That is when you don't think twice about something and you just say, yeah,
got it. Yeah. Okay. I could
yeah.
see that. I feel like that's Spanish. Sometimes I'm like getting there.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Going to Spain was what really helped. Just ordering food. Somebody actually said to me, like, they knew my friend who I was with was not from Spain, and
Yeah.
he called that up because she was having a hard time. And then when I ordered, he was like, "But you're from here, right?"
Wow.
And
Amazing.
yeah, like the accent, that came to me
Yeah.
pretty naturally too. Somehow, what's your number one tip for someone just starting to learn a new language?
Discipline, have some grace for yourself, and keep pushing it. Like, I'm noticing I used to have like 19 clients for Italian. Now, since I have also another job, I just have like 4 or 5. I'm noticing that I have a student who is like an older person. She's in her 50s, very accomplished in life, like big photographer, director in her daily life, really able to master language and express very interesting thoughts. But when it comes to Italian, again, is like the toddler phase of like speaking very, very simple Italian, and that gets her very frustrated, right? And this is kind of like a self-sabotage mood in which you put yourself when you're learning a new language, which you should avoid. You should be like, people are going to understand because humans connection work. People understand each other even if they don't speak the same language. A mistake is not going to be something that people will hold against me, or I will get myself understood no matter what. And like the purpose is better than the message. So let's just try. And with trying, you will learn. And I
Yeah.
mean, I speak English, but I still make mistakes. And I've been studying English for, I don't know, 20 years. And here I am still making mistakes. So it's fine. People
Yeah,
get it. Yeah.
that's a really good reminder. What's the biggest mistake that people make when they're learning a new language?
There are a few, and it depends on the language, right? Like Italian, there's a different way of saying words and sounds, right? So people sometimes don't say sure, they say sk, and sk and sure as different like sounds, and they bring you to different meanings of the word, no?
Mm.
So someone that says sciarpa means scarf, but if you say scarpa, it means shoes. So you really need to pay attention on what you're saying.
Yeah. What do you say to students who feel like they're not learning fast enough?
I'm very patient. And again, try not to say that to them if I'm their teacher, because like you need to encourage people or keep learning, and everybody has like a different like learning curve. It's very different if you're even studying a language twice a week or just once a week. Makes a complete difference in like your learning curve. If you're living, for instance, in Los Angeles, where you can be exposed to a lot of Spanish, is very different than living in Ohio, where probably nobody speaks Spanish. So I encourage my students to keep on learning, to maybe listening to some podcasts or listening to some songs in Italian, like typing into their passions. Rather, if they're passionate about movies, go and watch like a movie in Italian with subtitles, or listen to like the most loved Italian playlist. And they will like people that like languages and they like music, they will come to me being like, hey, actually, I'm listening to this rapper. He's great. I don't understand anything, but I love the accent. I love what he's saying. And so that's what you should do. Just keep on doing it. Like everybody has a different pace and it takes time for everybody.
It's good. I love that you have so much grace with your students and yourself in learning language.
It's the key. We're our worst critic, right? It's really important to be like, if my best friend was studying a new language, how would I talk to her? Right? I would encourage her. And that's how you encourage yourself. Like with the same grace.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. So kind of going back to how learning language connects with culture, how does teaching Italian help you stay connected to your roots?
This is a great question, and I'm so glad you're asking me because I have zero Italian friends in Los Angeles. Believe it or not, I have a
Really?
post-it. I swear, I have a post-it on my window on kind of goals, stuff that I want to do. One is like being more involved in the community. Like another one is like applying for master programs. Another one is finding Italian people. And I haven't found anybody. So if you're watching this spot, you're gonna say this and you're Italian, text me. And you live in Los Angeles.
Yeah, they're out there.
They're out
Yeah,
there somewhere.
absolutely.
I know. And there are some Facebook groups, but I'm a bit lazy of like looking. But then teaching is what really keeps me connected to Italian and Italy in general, because with my students, sometimes we read Italian articles or stuff that are happening in Italy. And just mastering my language and not being judged here for my accent, but just using my mother tongue language, listening to Italian songs, explaining them like Italian words or a way of saying that in English don't exist. There's a specific one that I want to tell you.
Mhm.
So in Italian, let's say that I'll give you an example. You're ridiculous in front of someone, right? You're saying the wrong thing, or maybe you say something really awkward that you shouldn't say, or maybe I don't know, you step on a shit and then you go in someone's car and it starts smelling, right? You know what
Yeah.
that's kind of? Okay. In Italian, there's a specific metaphor for that, which is a statue of or a figure of shit. So figura di merda is being ridiculous in front of someone.
Figura de vera?
Exactly, figura di merda. There's no way of saying that in English. And I say figura di merda all the time. So when I'm trying to explain that to my partner, it's like, what are you saying? I mean, in Thailand, we have a way of saying it because they feel that we're a bit clumsy and awkward. And yeah.
As most of us are.
Yeah.
We need that. We need just figura de vera.
Super well. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. I need to remember that. Because I have that's kind of stuff. Oh my gosh.
All the time. All the time. And so when I tell my students, we have an expression to say that in time, they're like, oh my God, let me write it down. They always write down like bad words or
Of course. Yeah.
or yeah. I don't know.
So that's a good segue into the fun part. It's just some just fun with language, Italian language. What's a phrase in Italian that doesn't translate well to English, but says so much about Italian culture?
Oh my God, there are so many. Okay, there's one that is, I think, perfect. So in English you say better safe than sorry,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
In Italian we have the opposite. Meglio chiedere scusa che permesso, meaning better saying I'm sorry than pardon, can I do this?
Mhm.
Usually we're less politically correct than Americans. We do
Yeah.
something and maybe eventually we're gonna say sorry.
I'm on board with that. There is a saying, but it's not as popular. For beg for forgiveness instead of ask for permission.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I try to live that way because I feel like I follow a lot of rules, and then I'm like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, maybe if I trust my gut and I do something, and if it's the wrong thing, I can, apologize later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, 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 yes,
I love
yes.
that though. But
Maybe
that,
I'm trying to think if there are other ones. There are so many, like all the metaphors. I always try to talk using metaphors with my partner, literally translating the Italians to English. And it's always like, what are you saying? One thing, maybe it's not a specific thing, but now that I'm doing this English exam,
mhm,
I'm noticing how also it's different the way we write, right? English is when you write a text, when you write an essay, you write like the most important sentence at the beginning, and then you develop like paragraph in which you explain why your first idea makes sense. Italian is just a big mess in the sense that you start from wherever you want. You can start talking from like 100 years ago and arriving to the point, and the point can be made at the very last second of the text, and it still works. But so I think it's very interesting the way I feel Americans are way more direct, productive, to the point, logical, and like at least the Italian language is a way more nuanced,
mhm,
and you sometimes do a lot of rounds before getting to the point, and I think maybe people could perceive it as not direct or like
yeah,
you know
abstract.
yeah, abstract, or yeah, without senza capo né coda, without a beginning or an end. Mm,
Interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and that's how we are a little
Huh.
bit.
That's fascinating. I don't think about how like and then the structure, how it's different.
I remember when I was studying for the TOEFL test, an English proficiency test, our professor used the example of like Japanese. And they were saying that since the Japanese culture is very polite, you cannot go straight to your point.
Mm,
It's kind of like as writing in circles. You're trying slowly but steady to get to your point, but you are not being very direct. And so she was using this example to be like, you need to kind of forget about your culture and the way that you propose your ideas when you're learning English, and you need to have a more like direct approach. It's kind of like aggressive.
interesting. I
Yeah.
never thought of Americans as aggressive. I thought that pretty passive. I mean, we're on the West Coast and it's a
Yeah.
little bit more known to be
Yeah.
passive. But huh?
But you know, we as Italian, I feel we perceive like that Americans are everything is about self confidence. So you bring your point and you try to drag your own crowd and to what you're trying to say. And I think Italians we don't have the same self esteem. We're self sabotaging ourselves the whole time. We're like, I cannot do this. I'm not good at this. And I feel that my perception of Americans, or the way also you guys like write or like articulate what you
Mm,
think, I don't know, with a little bit of more self confidence.
I see.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
I have a few other little fun just questions of how to say certain things. What is the best Italian phrase to charm somebody at a local cafe? Hey, I see a cute person. What's a good phrase to charm
Yeah.
somebody?
You could say, che
What's that?
cosa fai stasera?
How do you say that again? Slowly.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to say
Che cosa
che cosa?
stasera?
Stasera.
Yeah.
What did I say?
What are you doing tonight? That is my direct cover.
Love it. Love it. Okay. How do you say I need a gelato break immediately?
Bisogno
Bisogno?
di una pausa
Can you pausa?
per un gelato. One more time. Ho bisogno
Ha bisogno?
di una pausa.
Pausa? That's hard.
Is di una pausa
Di una pausa. Okay.
per un gelato.
Per un gelato. Write that one down.
No.
I
Perfect.
love it.
Yeah.
What's a funny way to say I'm so full I can't eat anymore after a big Italian meal?
Okay, there's a way that I say I'm full like the moon. Okay. That is beautiful. Sono
Sono
piena
piena
come
come
la luna.
la luna. Again, okay.
S-
Sono piesa
Piena
piena
come.
come la luna. That's like, wow. Those are helpful. Do you do that when you're teaching languages too? Use
Yeah,
that's helpful.
I do. I do.
Yeah, I think yeah, I can see that as a dancer. It's always helpful when they use metaphors of like, oh, you're gonna do this move, kind of like your, I don't know, tractor lights your hips.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's helpful to have those
it is.
signals or something.
It is. Sometimes I even, this is a good one. I want to teach you the numbers in Italian, okay? Especially because from 1 to 16, it's kind of easy, but at 16, we change. So let me tell you. Let's say 10, we say 10.
10,
11, 11,
11.
which is basically 1 plus 10, which is 10. 1
Okay.
plus 10, 11, right? 11,
11,
12, 12,
12,
13, 13,
13,
14, 14.
4. I want to say all of them like Spanish.
That's good.
Quattro di, quattrici?
Bravissima. Exactly. 15, 15.
15,
16, 16.
16.
Uh-huh. When we turn from 16 to 17, this dici goes at the beginning. So it's going to be 18, 18,
18, 8,
8,
8,
18,
18,
19, 19.
19.
Yeah. So what I used with my students is that I don't know if do you remember on MTV Pimp My Ride that they were doing for their Sweet 16?
Yeah.
So I'm always telling my students the 16 in Italian is a turning point because people get their cars and like they celebrate, and that's when the dici change position.
I got it.
Yeah. So
that's a good one.
I always try to use with my students stories so they can remember drama rules as well.
Oh yeah, that's so helpful. Stories. And now I see what you're saying about Italian and Spanish about dropping the S because I want to say like dos, tres, seis.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. If only I can learn all the languages. It's always impressive when you meet people like you who know several languages.
Yeah. I mean, one, I think, opens the door for many others. As soon as you learn Spanish or French, is a door to other 4 languages. Easy. So you can do it.
Oh, that's great.
You can do it.
Another goal is to backpack Europe. So it would be cool if I know Spanish and Italian and French, and then I can just go through the country.
And not get scammed because all of my not all my clients, a lot of my Italian clients, they go overseas, they go to Italy. They're like, I've been to Naples. A pizza was $30. I was like, what? Where did you go? Did you go to the most American place ever? Because a pizza in Naples is €5. And they were like, oh my God. So when you know a language, you are really, you can like dodge the bullet of very touristic spots. And
that's great. And you can connect with people. It's a huge skill.
Yeah.
Huge asset.
There's another thing that I tell my students. I'm like, if you go to Italy, to make sure that this is a real, or if you go to the United States to an Italian restaurant, there are 2 things that you have to look at the menu to make sure that it's an authentic Italian, or that at least they made the effort of translating the menu properly. The first is when you look at the pizzas, the mushroom pizza,
Mhm.
mushroom in Italian is funghi.
Fungi. Okay.
Exactly. It's Funghi.
Okay.
The lazy ones who don't translate the menu well, and so it's not a legit Italian place, they forget the H. So I always tell my students if the H is missing, no bueno, not a good Italian restaurant.
Got Okay.
Yeah, there
That's
are
a
ways.
good trick.
Mhm. Next time you go to any pizzeria here in LA, let me know.
Okay.
Take a picture of the menu.
I'll look for that age.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's great to know. Do you have any other advice for somebody who wants to master a new language?
I feel that the more we grow up, the more effort we need to put in learning something new.
Mhm.
It could be a new profession, it could be a hobby, it could be a language. With also all the social media, attention span is super reduced. So it requires a lot of energy. My suggestion is challenge yourself. Don't just do Duolingo.
Mhm.
If you can afford, maybe find like a language buddy online and you can teach English. So many people want to learn English and you can teach them and you can have in return, Spanish or Italian or whatever.
Mhm.
So you can do like this kind of like exchange, expose yourself to podcasts, music, shows, watch
Yeah.
Love is Blind. So many language centers or like libraries, they have like affordable courses. If you have the chance and the finances, like take a course or maybe have like a private teacher and just, yeah. But don't be lazy. Don't just do Duolingo because I think you can improve. You can challenge yourself with something more difficult. Also, because Duolingo is not a lot of like talking, it's a
No.
lot of like recognizing words and maybe putting them in order and maybe increasing your vocabulary, but not in a conversational way.
Right. I think the thing that Duolingo has really helped with is just creating that habit because
Yeah.
I like the way it's structured with the streaks and all that to where I now have like 160 something day streak where I'm like, I need to keep going. So now I'm doing it every day. But then it's really helped with basic stuff. I was seeing somebody for a bit who speaks Hebrew, and I know nothing about that. So I was like, I'm curious. Started learning the alphabet through Duolingo. And so it really helps to kind of get that introduction and the streaks. But I do hit that point where I'm like, okay, but I'm not able, I can recognize the words, but I can't really speak it.
Yeah.
Or I want it to be more fluid, more advanced.
Yeah.
I also wanted to acknowledge what you're saying about how it gets harder as an adult and with
Mm.
attention spans and everything. But one of the things I learned in my psychology courses was about neuroplasticity in the brain and how we are born with so many neurons and it's like use it or lose it.
Yeah.
And there's a few big shedding periods. I'm not an expert in the field, but it's just we lose them over time. So it's a lot easier for a baby to learn multiple languages, and then the more time goes on, we lose those if we're not using them, and it's harder to speak a language. So the younger, the better. Not that you can't do it. It's just I plan when I have a child, like get those languages into them early, so it'll be so much
Yes,
easier.
absolutely. No, this is probably the best advice that someone can have. Like, if you have a partner that speaks another language, really expose your child to that language immediately. I'm not sure how it works in a bilingual or trilingual household. Like if I would have a baby one day with my partner and I'm Italian, but I also speak Spanish and he speaks English, how to manage these three languages without him, without the baby having like a brainstorm of like multiple languages. I think you need to separate them somehow. I'm not sure,
I don't know.
but yeah, but expose, yeah, your child since a young age
Mhm.
to as many not as many at least a couple of other languages.
Yeah. So this is all really helpful. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your expertise. For people who want to learn a new language, having grace, you give some really good tips about just being nice to yourself and doing things like watching Margaret's Blind in that language that you want to learn. I think those are great tips. Anything else?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are so many resources out there, literally. When I was teaching Spanish, for instance, there was a great resource that it's called Profe de L. And there you have newspapers article about Frida Kahlo, if you like art.
Mm.
And you read a passage, he would highlight for you new words, it would explain them to you. Then there are going to be short clips and short video, and then you can pause and you can read. It's very entertaining. I feel that there are way more materials that are really tailoring our attention span of 45 seconds.
Yeah.
So there are stuff. There are stuff. So love is blind, have grace, have discipline,
Hmm.
expose yourself. Like there's no, the wrong move is not talking or not
Hmm.
trying, right? It's better making mistakes but trying rather than preventing yourself to speak because you're ashamed. Because that's also what kids are not ashamed of anything. They just try, right? It's just try and error. And this is the same. Like you try and people will be nice with you and understand. And then look resources online for free. Like sometimes you don't have to look for a language teacher. There is stuff for free that you can look for.
So, since this is a podcast about goals, what is a goal that's at the top of your list right now?
I have a couple. One is I'm not completely sure if I want to go back to school for social work. I'm in the process of applying. And so one of my goal is revisiting my career and hopefully being paid a little bit more. Mhm. And so maybe doing a master in social work is something that I could like help me. Another goal that I have for next year is to be involved in the LA tenants unit
Yeah.
because I want to learn more about like tenants rights and do something more for this community because I
Yeah.
feel that we are in a very gentrified spot in Los Angeles where there are a lot of like issues happening, especially on housing. I don't want to turn my face away. I want to just lower my back away. I want to do something for the community. And so I'm trying to get into the LA tenants unit and hopefully collaborate with them in the future.
Wow, that would be amazing. And you're such a big advocate, community builder, and I so admire that about you.
Nice, thank you.
Is there anything else you would like to share? What do you have going on with you? How can we help you? How can people, if they want to learn Italian or maybe Spanish or another language, you're open to it, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, that will help me. So I do have a profile on Superprof, which is a platform for tutors and students. So people can find me there. The first lesson is free. We can try it out and see if they like. I have like a few interesting stuff that happened. I had a couple of famous actors that actually took some Italian classes with me. And it was super nice to read their script of new movies that were not still out, but they want to perfection their Italian pronunciation.
Yeah.
So I have some other people that they just want to go to Italy for a summer and order. There are some other people that ask me, I have a wedding at the maid of honor. Like my best friend's partner is Italian. Can you help me tailoring a nice little discourse for them and like speech?
Mhm.
And so we did that, and it was like a 2 week thing, and that's was it. So I feel that there's space for everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of my goals is like keep on teaching Italian because I think it's something that I'm really passionate about. And maybe in the future, even having students that maybe want to come to Italy, and I can show them around, like Milan or bringing them to the Dolomites or bringing them to Rome or the Amalfi Coast or maybe even finding like more non-touristy spots and maybe helping local communities. That will also be really nice.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds amazing. It's
Yeah.
fun, good connection building.
Yeah.
So your profile is on Superprops. I will put that in the description of the podcast. Thank you so much for joining.
Well, what are your goals? I'm curious to know what is in
What are
on your list. What
what
is
is on my
next?
list? Well, people are gonna find out what's on my list through this podcast, and then I'll also do episodes that are not just things on my list. But I'm gonna start the list, and there's so many things on there, and they go from super simple to like writing a letter of appreciation to somebody, all the way to like backpacking Europe, mountaineering, learning to surf. There's so many different things. I'm doing an episode on how this all started. That'll be the first episode, is how the Goalist started, what it is, my background, and why I got so into gold.
That's awesome. If we can wrap it up with something about what you just said about surfing, for instance, River is a surfer and he has been a surfer teacher.
Oh my gosh, perfect.
So, to my point, I feel that the last thing comment that I want to make is like be vocal on your goals, be vocal on your passions, be vocal on what you need. Because I feel there's a community of people out there that sometimes have already the answer there for you. And
Mhm.
so maybe you're going to like the longer route, but being vocal and being like, that's what I want to do. Do you have something for me? Sometimes create bridges and brings you faster than you think.
100%. That's a lot of what this podcast is about too. And that is such good advice that you just gave, is being vocal, because you don't know who out there that is in your circle or even just outside of it that you meet. I meet somebody on a plane and they might be willing to help give you a blueprint at least or something to reach your biggest goal. Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. If anybody listening has questions or thoughts, please leave them. And until next time,
Well,
thank
thank you
you.
for having me.